The Dallas Cowboys made several big roster moves on Wednesday, including signing a former All-Pro running back. We'll break it down on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Cowboys practice squad, all of the players that have signed. We'll talk about a couple intriguing prospects that they did lose. But Landon, let's start with the Cowboys signing a marquee free agent who is in the best shape of his life. Oh, sorry, I'm reading that from an agent. The Cowboys signed Dalvin Cook on Wednesday to their practice squad. What are your thoughts?
I think your thoughts, the agent's thoughts were pretty much what I was thinking, right? That it's all the stuff that we've seen on Twitter about how, he's best shape of his life. Last year he's coming off a shoulder injury, and that's the problem, right? The shoulder injury, not that he's a 29-year-old running back with 29-year-old running back legs. It was. I guess the thing that I was most thrilled about is that it was a practice squad situation and not that they were signing him to the active roster, and so it didn't feel like it was too much of an overcommitment to it. I can justify what they're doing here, right? Like signing him to the practice squad, having him on the roster in case something goes wrong. Look, you've got already a 29-year-old running back on the roster. What happens if the wheels fall off really quickly with him and you just need another competent NFL running back? You don't quite have that, but you have Dalvin Cook instead. So it's like you can, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. Certainly, this isn't a situation where Dalvin Cook is being signed to get 25 touches per game or anything close to that. If anything, it's more of a break glass in case of emergency sort of situation with Dalvin Cook. Maybe he gets called up for some of these games for just to get some touches, but I don't see Dalvin Cook taking touches away from Rico Dowdle. Nailed it, Dowdle. Anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just I get so annoyed by some of this social media stuff. I mean, you can just tell when agents are crafting tweets for NFL insiders. It's ridiculous. Teams across the NFL have been doing this for a while now that the practice squads are expanded, right? It used to be when your practice squad was, I think it was 8 spots, you would generally only use those spots for kind of undrafted free agents, guys with some upside that you wanted to develop. But now with the practice squads opening up to, I think it's 16 players and having anybody eligible to be on the practice squad.
The rule change is really a huge thing.
The rule changes made it where you can bring in a vet like Dalvin Cook, have him get in shape, not take up a 53-man roster, and then by week 4, week 5, if it's just clear, hey, he doesn't have anything left, or if, hey, our starter went down, we need a NFL running back to help get us through 3 weeks, you have the ability to do that. I just want to be clear. I don't think, and I could be totally wrong, I don't think the Cowboys signed Dalvin Cook with the idea of he is going to be a factor in the backfield anytime soon.
Agreed. I think what this has done, and we haven't really talked about it as a community so much, but I think ultimately what these new practice squad rules have done is that they've given the opportunity for these guys that are street free agents that will end up on a team at some point, right?
Yes.
Instead of them just being out in the cold for 10 weeks and then trying to come off the street to play NFL football. Now, like that level, that like kind of top level of street free agents that maybe aren't quite good enough to be rosterable, but are, going to likely play for a team at some point in the NFL this season, they can be on a practice squad. So they're part of a squad. They're working out a facility. They're getting the benefits of all that. They're practicing. They have a medical staff behind them, right? So I think that it allows you to kind of semi-store, these free agents in your practice squad, even though they're still available for other teams. Like if someone wants to sign these guys off the team,
Yeah,
off
of
the
course.
practice squad, still available. But it provides structure for the free agent who's got a facility to go to every single day, a playbook to learn, and that sort of thing. And it provides insurance for the team so that if they needed to go get a guy, there isn't quite as much of a ramp up to call him up to the practice squad. He knows the playbook. He's already in the facility. Don't have to go work him out. It's just a lot more seamless process for, hey, we feel like we might need one of these vets. Let's keep him close. And for the vets, like I said, it's structure, it's money, it's a job. There's there as well.
And we've seen teams over the last couple of years do this with some of these vet running backs, like LaShawn McCoy, who I think got a Super Bowl ring with Tampa Bay and Kansas City as that practice squad running back, where no desire to play him in the regular season. But if it happens to be that you need a guy for one game who can pass protect, that can hold onto the football and can run the offense the way that you want it to be run, he can do that. Another reason why I don't think that Dalvin Cook is going to have a big role on this team is because and you and I were talking about this yesterday, I can't envision a situation where Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott are active at the same time, simply only for special team reason. And I want to add this. Mike McCarthy at his press conference today said Rico Dowdle will get fewer special team snaps than ever before because of his expected increased workload on offense. So if Rico Dowdle's not playing special teams, if Ezekiel Elliott's not playing special teams, and Deuce Vaughn can only be a backup kick returner, that's basically three running backs that aren't doing anything on special teams. You can't have a fourth guy that offers you nothing.
Lipke taking the running back room on his back,
I know.
doing all the
have
special team work. Yeah, it's really impressive. Look, I mean, it's a great point, right? Like it becomes difficult to construct a game day roster if you're going to have an entire running back room short of Lipke that can't play special teams, right? So I think it is difficult to kind of and beyond that too, like I think it would be difficult to justify bringing Dalvin Cook up to the game day roster while you have Zeke Elliott, because
they won't do it.
There's no way that they would get. I mean, what's the most amount of carries that Dalvin Cook would get while everyone else is healthy and rostered? Like 4, 5 in a game? Yeah. Like maybe that would be a high end. And I just can't imagine that they're going to roster him simply. No special teams, simply for 4 or 5 carries a game. That's just not likely.
My guess is the Cowboys are betting and hoping that one of Zeke and Dalvin Cook can end up being a competent player. Now, I think they believe it's going to be Zeke because of what he can do in short yardage and goal line and as a pass blocker. But Dalvin Cook at least gives them somebody else with some experience to kind of handle that role if they need it.
Yeah, again, I think it's basically a break glass instead of in case of emergency situation. Yeah, it's like and alternate, right? Yeah, like insurance in case Zeke falls off a cliff suddenly. Yeah. Really, So it's just another. It's less likely that that'll happen to two veteran running backs than just putting all your eggs into one veteran running back.
2 quick points before we move on. I think Dalvin Cook signed now because this is probably the easiest path to snaps for him. Like if Zeke just doesn't have it or Rico Dowdle can't stay healthy, it does make sense that he could probably get onto the field with Dallas quicker than anybody else. And I just don't know how much interest other teams had in Dalvin Cook. He's been a free agent. He was a free agent last year, right? He was a free agent at the end of the 2023 season. That's when Baltimore picked him up for the playoff run. He was a free agent all of 2024 until a day ago, right? So my guess is Dallas, maybe one other team had some interest in him, and that's why he decided to sign now. The other thing is, usually we hear about how much money these guys get, right, instantly, and especially if this agent's telling insiders how good of shape he is in. My guess is that Dalvin Cook got the vet minimum here.
I would think so too. Yeah. Since we haven't heard a single thing about it, that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's not a lot of risk here. I know people like to poke fun at the Cowboys for having 2 great running backs from the 2018 season, but whatever. All right, let's talk about some of the other moves the Cowboys made on the practice squad, including bringing back our old friend Carl Lawson. Let's discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Are you tired after lunch? Listen, you're not alone. I get tired every day after lunch, always right before we jump on this podcast. But you know what's helped me? 5 Hour Energy. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick me up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore, including watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and so much more. Go try them all. On the site right now, you can even have the option to build your own 12 or 24 pack. You choose the flavors and it's delivered right to your door. Go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com and get some 5 Hour Energy products today. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONFB. Again, LOCKEDONFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is valid only through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, let's talk about the full Cowboys practice squad. I'm going to run through the names, and you tell me which ones are the most intriguing to you.
Okay.
Dalvin Cook, Jalen Cropper, Josh Ball, Princeton Fant, Amari Ojawari, I believe is how you say his name, Phil Hoskins, Josh Butler, Malik Davis, Denzel Daxon, Keemon Hall, Kelvin Harmon, Darius Harris, Amani Johnson, Carl Lawson, Brock Magnuson, Dakota Shepley, and Nick Vigil.
That's a lot of names. Yeah. So I think the first one that really sticks out to me is, and I guess it shouldn't be too surprising, but we were shocked to see Josh Ball get cut. And so I was a little bit surprised to see him make it through the claims.
Yeah.
I mean, again, speaking out of both sides of my mouth, I just talked about last week how, most of these guys don't get claimed. Having said that, we'll talk about the fact that the Cowboys lost a couple of different guys in claims. Yeah. So I thought that Josh Ball making it through was pretty interesting. And especially considering that I thought that he had a better camp and preseason than Waletzko did. I
think maybe they felt like Waletzko would have been harder to get through the
because he's a draft pick, because he's a tackle.
Well, I mean, Josh Ball was a draft pick too, but just because he's the better athlete, right?
Maybe. Yeah, and I think the position too is like they view Ball more as a guard, maybe. So, getting Carl Lawson back was obviously nice. I think to me that could have been the plan all along. Like that. This maybe the plan has always been to put him on the practice squad when they signed him. So I'd be interested to kind of figure that out. I'm not surprised that Nick Vigil ended up back on the squad. We talked about the fact that we think he's a guy that would end up back on the practice squad, but
I want to mention something to you. So Nick Vigil, our guy Brock, and Darius Harris, the three linebackers, they made it on the practice squad. I'm kind of shocked that Willie Harvey, their UFL linebacker who made some plays in the preseason, wasn't one of those three names.
I will tell you this, that when I walked onto the practice field at Oxnard, and I don't know if this person wants me to reveal their name, so I won't say who it was, but somebody who's tapped into the Cowboys that I was having a conversation with, the very first person that I spoke about to anybody on training camp was about Brock Marginson, and the person's quote was basically, "Mark my words, this dude is making it on the practice squad." And that was like the second day of practice. So the Cowboys clearly liked this guy specifically in something. And then that's been very clear since at least OTAs. And then, the other linebacker, Darius Harris, I wonder if this isn't an age thing, because
maybe. Harvey was 29, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about the UFL players is that usually the UFL is their second chance. So they spend a couple years there. And then if they get back in the NFL, it's on a shorter stint because they're already kind of aging out. Right. I wonder if that isn't the case with him. So I know that I know that they liked Mogensen. I think Vigil's a guy that is likely to play games. Maybe if there's an injury, even start a couple of games for the Cowboys. I don't know as much about Darius Harris other than I know that he was on the team and they liked him enough that they brought him back. They probably needed a third linebacker on the practice squad, and they felt like youth was going to be served there.
All right, let's talk about Carl Lawson, who the Cowboys somewhat surprisingly released a couple days ago, back on the practice squad. It's not super surprising, right? Because it sounds like they wanted Carl Lawson to get into more football shape before he's ready to go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is like a 1 or 2 week thing and then he's right back on the 53-man roster.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that makes sense. I think that maybe, there's a mechanism in there that I wonder if they wanted to get him in before the first preseason game. They didn't want to guarantee his contract, right?
Right.
So what you do is you sign him before the preseason game, have him play, cut him, and then sign him to your practice squad. And then after week 1, if you want to sign him to your regular season roster, his season-long contract isn't guaranteed at that point. But if you sign him before the season, his contract is guaranteed. So that's probably why they did that. Like I said, I don't really know if that was. It would be interesting to know if that was the original plan all along, or if they saw something in the preseason game that really made them like, we don't want to take the risk with this.
I mean, they just don't have a lot of defensive end depth, right, on the roster, right? Because it's Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, Marshawn Nealand. I guess Chauncey Golston and Tyrus Wheat kind of fill out the rest of your roster, but that's it. Like there's not a lot of depth at the pass rusher position going into the year, at least with their 53-man roster.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and they only kept one other guy on their practice squad. So I wouldn't be shocked if they weren't done here yet. And I'm also interested to see exactly what the plan is with Wheat. Is Wheat going to be one of your game day inactives, or is the plan to actually get him in there and play? That'll be fascinating.
I almost think he's going to have to play though, just because of numbers, right?
Well, he could be. I mean, you're going to have like 5 or 6 game day inactives. You could easily have him on the roster, have him as a game day inactive, and then call up Lawson from the practice squad, so that the guy that's on your roster is not playing in the game, but the guy that's on the practice squad is playing in the game, which is a little crazy, but that could very well be the plan for at least the first several weeks.
We should mention that Malik Davis made the practice squad over Royce Freeman. I got to believe that's more special teams related, correct?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, I think Malik Davis had a pretty good camp too. I think they were probably comparable. And again, he's a little bit younger than Freeman is, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I also think that if you talk about styles, Davis is a little bit more of a smaller, quicker guy than the kind of body type that they already have with Zeke and, everyone else. So I do think that as good as Freeman was at camp at different points, I think age and special teams is what helped Davis get back onto that squad.
Jalen Cropper makes it, I got to assume, because he can be a kick returner. I don't think he had the best preseason, but I actually was impressed by Kelvin Harmon. Now, Harmon's a little bit older of a receiver, but I got to believe, like, if the Cowboys had a rash of injuries at the wide receiver position, probably Harmon would get on the field before Cropper, just because he's a more refined player at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I think so. Probably more reliable at this point, right? I think Harmon was a guy that had earned his spot. I think, listen, Cropper had a really good camp previous to the preseason games, which honestly, this is 2 years in a row that's happened. So maybe you give him one more year to kind of try to take that next step, and we'll see. Can I talk about 2 more guys that I thought were interesting off this group? I thought, Princeton Fant makes a lot of sense.
You stole my guy right there. But
sorry. I mean, it's more just because I think he's a great backup for tight end and fullback, and that's why they were cross training him. I think when they started cross training him, they were doing it with an eye like, hey, this guy will be on the practice squad, right?
To me, he is the direct backup to Hunter Lipke, right? Like, if Hunter Lipke were to get hurt, rather than just completely taking that role out of the offense, I think Princeton Fant would be the guy they call up for 2-3 games, put him back on the practice squad.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's that. And again, that's why they cross-trained Lipke at tight end too. I think Lipke will be your 5th or 4th tight end game day if something goes wrong, right? So, so Fant, that's obviously interesting. Keemon Hall was a guy that we had talked about a lot during the preseason as the kind of potential trying to work into as the backup, nickel. Obviously, it looks like that job went to Mukwamu, which I think is right. But I'm glad that they got Keemon Hall back on the practice squad, because I thought he gave you a lot of really good snaps throughout the preseason. And injuries happen. It's good to have more of these guys, and I think that he's shown that he's a reliable player if you wanted to stick him in there in the slot, which is, like I said, a tough position to play in the Zimmer defense.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting they kept 3 cornerbacks on their practice squad. I mean, I think that's just a position where you're going to need the depth as the season goes on, right? And you already are dealing with injuries, one to Deron Bland, so it makes sense. I would expect the Cowboys to continue to churn the names on the practice squad when it comes to cornerbacks, because they just probably need to try to find one more guy that they feel comfortable with. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, and again, like I think it's just a numbers thing. Like they're trying to find, if they can get one decent cornerback out of somewhere
Yep.
between Andrew Booth, Butler, and
Whoever.
Hall. Yeah, that would be enough to get them through that period until Bland comes back.
All right, Landon. Yet again, the Cowboys lost an intriguing prospect to the waiver wire. Last year, it was Isaiah Land. We'll tell you who it is this year next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I absolutely love Gametime. It's what I buy, or it's what I use when I buy all my tickets for sports, concerts, whatever events I'm going to. Gametime now has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. I also like the panoramic view. You can see exactly what your seat looks like before you enter the stadium and before you buy your tickets. They also have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, their customer service is outstanding. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every day, we will be back tomorrow to continue to update you on all the roster moves. The Cowboys have a practice today. We'll update you on that as well. I know Zach Martin is expected to do a little bit more today. Brandon Cooks is expected to participate. CeeDee Lamb will be back at practice. Mike McCarthy revealed that CeeDee Lamb gained 15 pounds of muscle this offseason.
Yeah.
Put on a little bit of body armor. We'll talk about that. But later, let's finish up with some depressing news. The Cowboys did lose 3 players in waiver claims. Or excuse me, 2 players in waiver claims and then a draft pick. Let's start with Julius Wood, the safety who made a bunch of interesting plays. It sounds like he was one of the last players the Cowboys were debating on keeping on the 53-man roster. I think they tried to sneak him on the practice squad because they already had so much depth at safety. They lose him to the Tennessee Titans. How big of a bummer is it?
I mean, it's just, it sucks because he's a good player. But the Cowboys clearly had more than they can handle here at the position. So it won't make a difference necessarily on the team overall, but it sucks to lose out. Not this year, but it sucks to lose out on a guy that you think is really talented and plays at a position which, you've kind of learned to prioritize now lately.
It might end up being better for Julius Wood, right? Like, you look at this Cowboys roster.
Yeah.
Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson are your starters. Marquise Bell and Wanya Thomas are the clear backups. Julius Wood, at best, was going to be the 5th safety of this team. He goes to Tennessee. Maybe he could be the 3rd safety there and actually play as a young kid.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be on the squad, and he's going to be a game day guy for them. So that's definitely a better opportunity for him. So, kudos for him. Excited to see what he does in Tennessee. That's for sure.
The other guys that the Cowboys lost on waivers was Eric Scott, they lost him to the Chiefs, who happened to be the team that the Cowboys traded up with to acquire Eric Scott in the 2023 draft. I'm a little bummed that the Cowboys couldn't keep him on the practice squad just because I didn't think he was terrible.
No.
But it's not great.
Well, yeah, he wasn't there yet. I mean, and clearly he was well behind the guys that he was going against on this side. He'll go to a spot where they'll give him a chance to kind of work behind the guys there and kind of develop. But I mean, I would be a little nervous if they were going to have to play him, at certain points.
Is this Javarius Ward 2.0?
I mean, it could be eventually, but I don't think I don't think it's the case early on. Like I think he still has some developing to
I think
do.
he's got a ways to go. I thought
Yeah.
Ward was quite a bit further ahead. The other
Yes.
guy, and this one's going to bum you out, Landon.
Oh,
Justin Rogers, the Cowboys' late round draft pick from this year at defensive tackle from a certain school called Auburn,
Mm.
decided not to sign with the Cowboys practice squad, decided to go with the Cincinnati Bengals again. It's always tough to lose a draft pick when they do claim what they go through waivers and they're available to sign in the practice squad. Rogers just must have felt like there was better opportunities elsewhere.
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe he just was sick of Coach Cavs yelling at him. Yeah. I mean, this one really sucks because I feel like he would have had an opportunity to play here. Like,
I think so.
I mean, of all the practice squad guys, to me, it seems like he's the no-brainer to play the most out of these guys. Well, maybe Carl Lawson, but outside of that, like, I just felt like he was a guy that I actually had on my 53-man roster that I released. He was, I think, one of only 3 guys I didn't get right, and so to not only lose him to cuts, but to lose him to another team's practice squad, that's brutal. And I have to wonder if there isn't like, personal thing there. I mean, this is clearly a player's choice, right? So I wonder what the thought process was there. If he wanted to be closer to home, if he, what it was, because I do feel like, unlike some of the other situations with where they got claimed, like Woods and all that, I don't know that he had a better opportunity to go play in Cincinnati than he does here.
And maybe
at
he
least
just
that
felt
much,
maybe he felt disrespected with the Cowboys trading for Jordan Phillips, signing Linval Joseph. He just felt like, hey, you know what? They don't think that much of me here. Let me go somewhere else.
Maybe that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, that definitely was disappointing to see because I really liked the way he was playing.
Yeah, and sometimes you just don't know with those defensive tackles. You just want to give them a year to learn the system, get a little bit stronger. And it's unfortunate they lost them, but I think the Cowboys roster overall is pretty good. It's pretty deep. So this is what happens when you have a good team. A lot of times these 6th and 7th round picks just don't have a way on the roster. And in the case of like Julius Wood, it's great that the Cowboys found him. It's great that he had an awesome preseason, but what would be his path to playing time here with the Cowboys? I don't know. Probably for his sake, it's probably better that he went somewhere else. And maybe that'll be the same for Justin Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly, I think the Woods got claimed right off of the thing, so he wasn't given a choice. I think the difference for me is Justin Rogers didn't get claimed,
correct,
and made a decision not to give that to the Cowboys.
Correct.
So that's more of a situation where the player thought that the situation didn't line up with his best interest. That's fine. Woods is a situation where he was taken from us, so we'll get over it, and maybe he'll come back at some point down the road.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen today. Now go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. You can find the link to the Locked On Fantasy Football Show in the descriptions of this podcast, so you don't even need to go search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow the show on YouTube as well. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.